Yeah, go
I'm,
ahead, Stan.
I'm Stan. I'm a great recovering alcoholic. And I thank God and AA for my life and all the men and women who have just helped me in this process right here. And I had to laugh when man, when you said if anybody want a copy of Stan's recording, like I don't know how good Stan's going to be. To be honest, did so like that's just funny to me. And because as nervous as I get every time I do this, I get nervous. And it's funny. My wife always look at me. She says, "All the time you've been doing this," she says, "just pray and breathe." And that's what I do. I pray and breathe, and I ask God for guidance, and like whatever happens, happens, right? So happy Wednesday to everybody. Happy Wednesday to you. And I like to do that. I like to do that. My sobriety date is May 6, 1987. I haven't found it necessary to take a drink in 36 years. And for that, I am truly grateful, truly blessed. And it's funny when I say that word gratitude, it's something that when I first came into AA, I heard people talking about. And when I sit here today and tell you I'm grateful, I feel that with every core of my body, how grateful I am to be sober. Um, I'm not in that hopeless state today. So I just want to tell you, and I always start here, like right before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous, and how it was I was 25 years old. Hmm. I was a bum. I had the one pair of shoes that had holes in the bottom of them. I had that one pair of black pants that were so dirty they were shiny, right? They'll stand up in the corner by themselves, and I lived in a boarded up house with a handful of people. And I was praying to die every day. At the age of 25, I was praying to die. See, our book, Big Book talks about that hopeless state of mind and body. And that's where I was at, that hopeless state of mind and body. And right before I got here, we did all the wrong things out of this house. I mean, people used to try to break into this boarded up house for the things we were doing. The police used to break into this boarded up house because of the things we were doing, the wrong things, right? But, but right here, before I got to AA, and I always share this because a guy came up to me and he had a gun and he told me how he could kill me and get away with it and nobody would know. And I knew that to be true because I knew who the guy was. I ripped the guy off, for a lot. And I would love to tell you this day that I was being tough when I was taunting this man, telling him what he wasn't going to do with this gun. I would love to tell you I was being tough. But see, again, our book talks about that hopeless state of mind and body. See, that day when I was taunting that man about what he wasn't going to do with that gun, at that day, that point in time, I wanted him to pull the trigger because I wanted to die. I had lost all hope at 25 years old. So what happened when you come into A, you hear about the moments of sanity, and I've had many of those before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I remember this one morning, it was one of the moments of sanity that I had. And I remember leaving that boarded up house early morning, and I had nowhere to go because I wasn't welcome at my parents' house anymore. They hadn't seen me in a long time. But what happened was God led me to their house. And I love this lonely walk that I took to get to their house because I was only a few miles away from their home, but they hadn't seen me in I don't know how long. And I remember on this walk, I found a $5 bill. And I like saying that because, see, I don't know what $5 does. Your brain's like a $5 bill did something to my brain. You understand what I'm saying to you? Like that chaos and confusion over $5, man. Was I going to drink? Was I going to rob somebody to add to that $5? What was I going to do? God saw fit. And it's funny how I talk so much about God now because it wasn't like that before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. God saw fit for me to make it to my parents' house. He saw fit for me to buy a pack of cigarettes and not any alcohol and not go rob anybody. I made it to my parents' house. I smoked one cigarette after another to get the courage to knock on their door. Mm. Man, I remember knocking on the door, and my dad came to the door, and he opened it that wide, right? And he said, "You're not welcome here." Yeah, like, and I knew that. I knew I wasn't welcome there, and I remember asking him, "Could I wash?" And he told me if I came in his house, he was going to call the cops on me. And I asked him, "Could I wash again?" And here's another one of the moments, because what happened was my dad let me into the foyer of his home. And I watched him go to the phone and make a phone call. So whatever was going to happen that day was going to happen. I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Whatever phone call he was making, whatever the deal was, I was ready for it. But he called my mother, and my mother said, "Get her boy some help." See, another one of the miracles is I had no idea my dad had been in AA, in Alcoholics Anonymous, for 5 years already. He had been sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had no idea. I had no idea. So there's a couple of things that's so special on this day. One, my dad was home to answer the door because I might not be sitting here today. Two, he was sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. Because see, if he would have been drunk the way I knew my dad growing up, I might not be sitting here today, because he would have killed me from all the stuff that I did to him, right? So he made some phone calls to his friends, a couple of his buddies in Alcoholics Anonymous, and they got me into a detox. And he took me to this detox, and I did 7 days in the detox, and I didn't hear one thing. I had no idea. I remember going into this detox, and they hand you that little pamphlet and tell you to answer all these questions. And I remember saying no to every question on here. Total denial about my life. There was no way I could be honest about my life. I just knew I wanted to die, but there was no way I could be totally honest about my life. So at the end of that 7 days, my dad came to get me, and he had a shopping bag where he bought me a brand new pair of sneakers, a couple of pairs of pants, a couple of shirts, right? So at the end of the 7 days, look, I got to tell you, I'm thinking I'm going home with my dad. That's what I'm thinking. I'm going back to their house. That's where I'm going. Man, he took me to a shelter and told me to continue doing what I'm supposed to do. Man, I was lost. I had no idea. Here I am in the shelter, had no idea about what to do. And I remember staying in that shelter for about 2 weeks before they had a bed for me where I went to detox at. It was a rehab. So they finally got a bed for me. And so I was able to go into the rehab. And when I started going to this rehab, we started making meetings, and they were bringing meetings in, and it hit me, because what happened was there were men and women sharing, but what really got to me was there were men sharing about their feelings, men sharing about how they felt on the inside and what happened in their homes. I saw men crying as they were sharing. That was different for me. You see, I wasn't raised that way. A man didn't cry, a man didn't share his feelings, and what went on in your home stayed in your home. And that's how we were raised. You know, I don't know about any of you guys, right? But me and my friends, when we came outside, we didn't hug each other talking about, "I love you today. Do you feel loved? Do you feel a part of?" Like, that wasn't the deal, man. We didn't do that, right? It was never that lovey-dovey stuff. It was always that tough guy stuff. It was always being tough, because you could never let anybody see anything other than that, because you would have been judged. You would have been called names. So I saw these men sharing it, and it blew my mind. Blew my mind. I didn't know that was possible. Because see, I learned early on how to take it. My dad was an alcoholic. Like, he would come home drunk, and there were times I would be that punching bag. And I'd be against the wall, and he'd be telling me how I had to take it, and I better not cry. So I learned early on how to take it. And I remember how he used to also tell me, see, I heard that saying too, "I put you in this world, I take you out of here." And I remember my dad would tell me, "Hit me back, hit me back." There was no way I was hitting this man back, because I thought he would just kill me, right? There was no way. But when I heard these men sharing this, man, it just blew my mind. And then as we started to make meetings further into this thing a little bit longer, the men and women that were sharing, they were talking about this way of life. They were talking about being happy, joyous, and free. They were talking about having peace of mind, liking and loving themselves, having a genuine smile, not struggling with want to drink or do anything else. That was foreign language to me. See, I didn't know what it was like to have peace of mind. I didn't know what it was like to like or love myself. But I guarantee you, as a teenager, if you would have asked me if I loved myself, I would have told you yes. Had no idea what loving myself was about. Had no idea. So they were talking about this way of life, and I also heard them talking about get someone to guide you through the steps, get someone who you can identify with to guide you through this program, right? So I never had a relationship with another man like that. I didn't have that. My dad was an alcoholic growing up. We didn't have that relationship. I hated my dad growing up. I hated him, you know. And there's a friend of mine that talks about in the household, when the alcoholic drinks, the whole house takes a drink. And I get that because when my dad came home drunk, the whole house suffered. We all suffered, you know. And so I remember hearing these men sharing, and I remember it was this one guy, and I'm so grateful because I talk a lot about sponsorship because in the 36 years that I've been sober, I've had two. My first one passed away my first 18 years, and he had 38 years. You know, and I had to go out and get another sponsor, and that man has been in my life my next 18 years, and he has 41 years now. You know, and I'm so blessed for that. I'm so grateful. But when I asked this first man to be my sponsor, it was a guy who had spent 14 years in a penitentiary, and he was bringing AA into him, and that's how he got turned on to Alcoholics Anonymous. He got sober while he was in prison. But what got my attention was he said a police officer was his sponsor. I don't know what does it for any of you guys, but like that did it for me because in the streets, that doesn't happen. You go to jail, you don't want nothing to do with a police officer. You follow me? And like, I was curious. And I asked this man to be my sponsor, right? I asked him on a Tuesday night. He didn't tell me yes. He told me to meet him on a Saturday, the following Saturday. And I met him at a meeting called Mustard Seed downtown Center City, Philadelphia. And this was a meeting, when you hear that saying from Yale to jail, everybody attended this meeting. Everybody. People right off the street would come into this meeting. And after that meeting, we went to the diner that was down the street from this meeting. And I remember how he sat me down and he said, what lifts are you willing to go to stay sober? And I remember telling him anything, but I had no idea what anything meant. I just knew I didn't want to go back to living the way I was living. I didn't want to go back to being that bum because I was listening to you guys. Like there was some attraction there, you know, and I wanted what you guys were talking about. I wanted to know what it felt like to be happy, joyous, and free, to live this life that you guys were talking about. And he looked at me and he told me, he said it wasn't important that I liked him. It wasn't important that me and him became friends. What was important is that I stayed sober and found a new way of life. And as I started to stay sober, that was so powerful to me because this man didn't want anything from me. This man cared more about my life than I cared about my life. He just wanted me to stay sober. Just stay sober, you know? And then what he did, he told me to get a home group. He said, get a coffee commitment, right? And he said, there's a lot of recovery in the bottom of a coffee pot. Now, I don't know what that does for you guys, but me being new and hearing that, I thought I picked a crazy man for a sponsor, right? Because I had no idea what he was talking about, recovery in the bottom of a coffee pot, right? What happened, it was my first introduction to service. I got a home group. This home group gave me a key. I had to be there 45 minutes before the meeting started. There were big hotel coffee pots, right? It takes that long, right? And what happened was some people were coming early and they would want to talk to me. So now I'm forced to say hi and to hold a little conversation with someone because I'm petrified. I don't want to open my mouth because see, when I came in here, they used to tell you to shut up and listen because you didn't know anything about staying sober. That's how they were, right? And then you get the old timers that come in a meeting and like they just want to pluck your brain. They just want to see what you know, just mess with you, right? So that was my introduction to service, man. And I started getting involved, you know, and he told me to get a big book, and you'll hear me talk a lot about my dad, and you know, February 12th well, it's a little over a year that my dad passed away, and so when I talk about my dad today, because of God and Alcoholics Anonymous, like when I talk about my dad today and when my dad passed, I talk about my friend who is no longer here. And it wasn't like that growing up. I hated him, you know. But this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous right here is the big book that my dad bought me 36 years ago. And I still have it to this day. So this is not only a design for living for me, man. This book is dear to my heart because my dad gave it to me 36 years ago, man. And like I treasure this thing. I treasure it, you know, and I'm grateful. I'm just so grateful for that. So what happened was we started to get into this book. We started to get into this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And as we started to do that, we started to look back at my life as we started to go through the steps. And as I started to go through the steps and looking back at my life at the powerlessness, you know, I remember how alcohol worked until it didn't. I remember how I started hanging out with these older friends and they drank. So to be with them, I drank. And what happened was we used to have these house parties, right? And I was the shy guy, man. I was the shy guy. I'm the guy that stand on the wall, scared to ask go across the floor, ask a girl to dance, right? Petrified, man. And we used to actually call them wallflowers because you're scared to get off of that wall, man. And like, I found out once I had a drink, though, it gave me the courage to walk across that floor and ask a girl to dance. See, alcohol started doing some things for me. It started making me feel okay. It gave me that courage. It made me feel a part of. And when I look at my life, it's amazing how I don't even know how I got out of bed as a teenager because I was angry. I didn't like my dad. I felt less than. I was envious of others. You know, because I would look and see what other people had, or their dad was okay. My dad was too drunk. My dad was the one that walked down the street staggering with his pants inside, you know, his inside of his pants pocket, inside out, because somebody done robbed him. He done lost his money. I was embarrassed, you know, of my dad, you know. And on top of that, I wanted to be like the cool guys, the older guys who were on the street corner, who dressed good, they had money in their pocket, the girls liked them. I wanted to be the number one guy, you know, and our literature talks all about that. So as a teenager, man, I had so much going on in this brain. I don't even know how I got out of bed as a young teenager, man, because I was just dazed and confused, man. I wanted to be a part of something, and I was searching. And alcohol was doing it for me. It was doing it for me, man. And it worked. But it's like that old thing. See, I remember drinking on the weekends. I remember then adding a couple of days. I remember drinking because it was holidays, you know, parties, whatever the case may be. But see, at some point, that line was crossed where I had to drink. It had nothing to do about it being rainy, sunny. It had nothing to do about whatever was going on. I had to have a drink. I had lost all control. A drink became more important than anything in my life. So as that started to happen, the unmanageability, when I got here, I was a bum. So that first step was real easy for me. It was easy. I was powerless. I saw that. I drank when I didn't want to drink. There were them days where I would say, man, I'm not going to drink today. And by 12 noon, I was drinking. You know, there was them paydays where I said, I'm not going to spend all my money tonight. And I spent all my money tonight after working all week. And I say next week is going to be different. And Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now, that didn't mean I wasn't out robbing people, still getting my alcohol and other things, but I wasn't going to spend my paycheck on Friday. And you know what happened? Friday comes around and I'm still spending my paycheck. So I was totally powerless, totally, and unmanageable. And then we came to that second step, came to the belief that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, right? So here we are. I found out in Alcoholics Anonymous that alcohol is just a symptom of my problem. I am the problem. My thinking is the problem. And how I thought about me, how I thought about you, and how I thought you thought about me. Like I was screwed up, totally insane. I didn't take responsibility for anything before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. I always blamed someone or something for the way I was behaving, for my behaviors, my attitudes, and my actions. And then we get to that third step, and here in the beginning, I was taught to just pray for the obsession to be removed in the morning and thank this power at night. Now, I was a guy my mother had us in church all the time growing up. So I was a guy that believed there was a God, but I never had faith and trust in a God. And here I'm saying this simple prayer, which was working. It was working because I remember at some point I was sitting in a meeting and something had happened. I hadn't thought about a drink and I didn't want to drink. Something had happened. But what happened was I went to approach this fourth step. And I heard a lot of people sharing about this fourth step, whole lot of stuff. And I thought I was ready for this fourth step. And I remember after about a month, my sponsor said, "How are you doing?" And I remember telling him, "I'm doing okay." And I can't curse on here. But he said, "When are you gonna stop BSing, right?" And at that point in time, he put me on the spot. And I hadn't been put on the spot. Like I couldn't wiggle my way out of this time. And I remember telling him that I was scared. And he looked at me and he told me, he said, I was scared because I didn't have faith and trust in a higher power that everything was going to be all right. And he was right. He was right. See, I was saying that little simple prayer just to remove the obsession, man, but I wasn't tapping anymore into this power that we talked about in Alcoholics Anonymous. Up to that point, it was very simple. But now, here I go. Here I go. What am I going to do? And what happened was I had to go back, see, to this big book. And now I had to start tapping into this power greater than myself. And I had to start praying for that willingness and the courage to do what was needed. And as I started to do that, something started to happen, because what happened was I was able to get through that fourth step. I was able to get through it. I was able to take a look at myself. And what happened was the freedom that I had. And I was looking for something, because I want to read this, because I love this. Someone sent this to me the other day, and I love it dearly. And it talks about, I'm lost. I'm going to look for myself. If I should return before I get back, please ask me to wait. See, that brings tears to my eyes. See, I don't know what that does for any of you, but I was lost my whole life, man. I was lost my whole life until I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. And something started to happen. I was searching for me. I was searching for this me. See, I was lost here in this chaos and confusion, man. I was looking for Stan. I was looking for me, man, and I couldn't find me in the midst of all the chaos and confusion until I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I started doing some work on myself, man, and I met me. I met Stan. I met me. And going through these steps, what happened was, when I sit here today and I tell you that, the reason why I say it, because see, today it's okay for Stan to be Stan. See, I always wanted to be something other than Stan before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't like me. I wanted to be something other than me. And today I sit here and I'm okay with Stan. Like when I sit here today, it's not important if everybody on this screen like me. What's important is I like me. I like the man that I am today, man. And what a joy that is. What a joy. So in doing that fourth step, man, and putting pen to paper, like, and looking back at my life, and then I have to go into this fifth step, and now I'm tapping even more in this power because now I got to get the courage to talk to this man about my life, all the stuff I just wrote, right? So I'm tapping into this power, man. And I remember how we went out in the park and we started talking, and I'm letting this stuff out. I'm letting it out a little bit at a time, man. But what happened was the more I started to let out, the free I started to feel. And as this man started to share with me, I realized I wasn't unique. I wasn't the only one that had done the stuff that I had done or gone through what I had gone through. Seeing here, I've heard people go through a whole lot, but I got to tell you, my story is the worst story because I lived it. My story is the worst story because I lived it. I went through that pain, chaos, and confusion. So we talked, and after we did that fifth step, and here we are in this sixth and seventh step now, right? And I got to tell you, I didn't want to be that person that I was before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous anymore. I wanted to change. I didn't want to be the scumbag that I was. I didn't want to be the self-centered person that I was that only cared about staying, only cared about me. See, growing up, I was a thief, like growing up, I didn't know, like in Alcoholics Anonymous, see, I didn't understand about stealing people's joy, people's peace of mind. I had no clue, no idea about any of that stuff. But I was a thief growing up, right? I steal your cars, your hubcaps, your 10-speed bikes. And for you older folks on here, them 8-tracks that you used to have in your vehicle back then, I was the thief. You know what I mean? Like I was there taking them out. You follow me? Like I was the thief. I harmed a lot of people my whole life. My whole life. And when I say all of that, like, and I sit here today in that sixth and seventh step, and I do that third step prayer, that seventh step prayer, and like I want God to remove all of that stuff. I do. I don't need all of that stuff. All of that stuff, man. I don't need to have all of that fake stuff. Like, I just want to be me. That's it, man. That's it. I want to have that peace, and it talks about humility, and that was a good reading on humility, man. And it's funny how I talk about humility because I remember being told, like, if you go around telling people how humble you are, you're probably not that humble, right? You know what I mean? Like, so, and that's the truth, right? So I remain humble because I have a sponsor in my life. I have a God in my life. To my understanding, I have you guys in my life who can carry me on this journey, man. I continue to show up here, because I know I have to be here. I want to be here, and that's so cool. So we get to this eighth step, right? And I remember I was told, just write down everybody you know, right? And I was like, everybody I know. Like, you kidding me? But what happened was, again, I told you, my whole life, I affected somebody. My whole life, and I remember on my eighth step, I had Jane Doe's, John Doe's, like, I didn't remember people's names, but I remembered the acts. I remembered the act. I remember the stuff that I did, knowing I'd never be able to make amends to them people, but it had to go on my eighth step. We talk about not leaving any stone unturned, and I had to get honest. Here's the first time in my life, man, that I'm truly getting honest about my life. Truly taking a look at Stan, and we get to this ninth step and talk about making amends, and I start making these amends and stuff, and so I want to go back just for a minute because right here before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, because we talking about God, and before I even got to that boarded up house, I lived in an empty apartment. My oldest daughter, her mother had left me. My daughter was about a year old, and And I liked sharing this because I had a 6-pack in my hand. I had a can in my, I was drinking a can. I had already been drinking. And I came across this store, right? And it had all of these posters outside these store, all these pictures, right? It had from naked people to superstars. You could have got whatever, man, right? But in the middle of this was footprints in the sand. In the middle of all of this, right? I remember reading Footprints in the Sand. I remember buying Footprints in the Sand. I remember taking it to that lonely apartment, putting it on the wall, and at different points I would go up and read it. Had no idea what God was telling me. I had no idea that God was carrying me when I couldn't carry myself. I had no idea. It meant something to me, but I had no idea. See, I was the guy, when I came in here, I was told that I learned in here that how you can start your day over. And that means like I could pause at any point of the day, say a prayer, and start my day over. Had no idea that. I was told it was like a bell went off. Because coming in Alcoholics Anonymous, not accepting things for the way they are at the present moment, people, places, things. I wanted things to hurry up faster than what God's plan is, and I would struggle a lot with accepting life for the way it was at the present time. So I would read that. I just had no idea. I had no idea. So this 9th step, it means a lot to me, because what I didn't tell you is that boarded up house that I used to live in, and it still saddens me to this day. There was a woman that used to have a 10-year-old daughter that used to stay in that house with us, and we used to do all the wrong things out of this house. No sooner I got in that rehab, I told you I went to a shelter for 2 weeks, and they got me in a rehab. No sooner I got into that rehab, that house was firebombed, right? One of the people that died in that fire was that 10-year-old child. Some of you may say, Stan, well, you were gone for a couple of weeks. That's true. I don't know what may have occurred while I was gone for them couple of weeks, but what I do know is all the wrong stuff I did before I left that place. I know how people were looking for me, trying to kill me before I left that place. See, I learned in here in Alcoholics Anonymous how I had to start taking responsibility for my actions. That's what I learned in here in Alcoholics Anonymous. So regardless of what happened or what didn't happen, I knew all the stuff that I had done. And I had to own up to that. And it still saddens me to this day. And my sponsor always tells me, Stan, you're not that person today. I know I'm not that person. But the beautiful thing about Alcoholics Anonymous is, man, I'm able to acknowledge them feelings. I'm able to feel sad about, because see, what happens is here, we harm so many people because of our attitudes, our actions, and our behaviors without even knowing it before we get here to Alcoholics Anonymous. And the direct result of that, a little child died because of all our behaviors. See, and that's one of the people who I can't go to and say, I'm sorry, how can I make it right? Because that person isn't here anymore. See, the 9th step is more than me just saying, I'm sorry, how can I make it right? It's about me changing that old way of thinking, attitudes and behaviors. It's about me changing where I don't have to keep apologizing for the same stuff I did here before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous. It's about me having a different attitude. So I get into this 10th step. Phew, I gotta wrap up. We learn how to talk in here, don't we? I gotta wrap it up. It's almost time. So I get into this 10th step, right? And I take this daily inventory, and and I'm so grateful. I have a sponsor in my life, and who cares? Who cares? Who loves me enough to tell me the truth? Both of them guys who have been in my life. And I do a daily inventory, and I love joking with this a little bit, because like if you have a mate or anybody, like they're the best person to go to and ask, how are you doing today, right? You know what I mean? I go to my wife and say, how am I? Now she's not in the program or nothing, so she'll sure enough tell me how I'm doing. You understand what I'm saying to you? But like I can go to her, and the reason why I share this is because I'm not afraid to go to my wife and say, how am I doing? because I'm not out doing the wrong things today. And that's a beautiful thing, man. That's such a beautiful, I don't have nothing to hide. I'm not hiding anything, you know? Like, and the thing she'll say is, you're a big baby sometimes, you know, and like, and that's okay. I'm a big baby, or some things need to get done around the house because I own my own company and I may work 6 days a week. And she'll be like, hon, there's some things that need to be done. You know, like, that's okay with me. That's okay. That's okay. Like, I don't have nothing that I'm hiding from my sponsor that I can't go to my sponsor and talk to about. My sponsor knows how I live. My sponsor knows my life. You know, my sponsor always talks about how we walk into a room full of strangers that help save our life, and how true that is. How true that is. I walked into a room full of strangers that helped save my life. And I sit here today. You know, and sort through prayer and meditation. I tell you, each one of them steps, man, I'm tapping into this power, man. I have a God in my life, man, that blows my mind. Just blows my mind. You know, and I pray constantly. I pray all the time. Like, I know I don't walk alone today. And what a good feeling that is. You know, I'm not the guy that's just sitting around saying them little foxhole prayers today. Like, I am truly asking God, man, to guide me, because I want to be this better human being. I truly do. I want to grow, man. I want to grow. I just want to keep getting better. I know there's always work for Stan to do. Always, always, always taking a look at Stan, you know? So I make meditation meetings, you know, that I do faithfully every Monday night. I'm praying all the time. Like, my sponsor in my life, man, you know, both of my sponsors, because I'm getting ready to talk about this 12 step. I've learned so much by having a sponsor. I've learned so much by watching them extend their hand to someone else. I learned so much from that. I watch them, man, like always being there for someone else. In and out of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, being there for someone else. That's a beautiful thing. It is. And I've learned that, you know, and in being involved in service, you know, back to that ninth step, like the best service, we all do all of this service stuff, home group, subcommittees, we do all of that stuff, man. We get that little pat on the back sometimes, man, great job you doing, great job. The best service, man, I love is when I'm doing something for somebody and nobody knows about it. It's only between me and God. That's it. Just between me and God, man. You know, and that's a beautiful thing. Because see, before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous, if I did something for you, everybody would have had to know what I was doing, because I would have had to be the big shot. You understand what I'm saying? Oh, Stan's the man. Stan's the number one guy. You know, today it's not that important. It's not that important today. So as a direct result of going through these steps, being involved in service, man, and doing the things that I was supposed to do. And, you know, my sponsor telling me how he loves me enough, like he loves me enough to step on my feelings than to step on my grave. You know, I love stuff like that. See, I like people who are in my life who's going to love me enough to tell me the truth. You know, they love me. So this process here has blown my mind, and through it all, my oldest daughter, who I told you about, grew up. Mother left me, grew up not calling me dad. 18 years ago, right? What happened was, I remember I used to go to my sponsor and argue with him. Man, I wanted to go to my daughter and say some things to her to hurt her feelings, just for her to say what I wanted to hear, and that was for her to call me dad. And I remember how my sponsor looked at me. He said, allow God to be God. You just suit up, show up, and do what a dad is supposed to do. Thank God for sponsors. See, left up to my own devices, I would have messed the miracle up, because what happened was the miracle happened. My child started to call me dad, right? That's why we need that guidance and direction in here. You know, and I have men and women in my life who guide me through this process. I do have a sponsor, but I have other men and women who help me as well. You know, and so about 18 years ago, right? I got to tell this story, right? my daughter on Christmas, right? She gave me a big box, red bow tie, Christmas. She's like, Dad, you got to open it up. So before this, I was blessed to start my own company and all that stuff. So I'm opening up the box, right? And I'm going too slow for it. She's like, Dad, oh, we all like gifts. I'm thinking it's a book. You know what I mean? I'm happy to get a gift. You follow me? But what happened was she wanted me to see the blessing that she wrote in the middle of this quilt, right? So I opened it up, I unfolded, right? I let it unravel. What she wanted me to see was what she had engraved. She said, the greatest gift I ever had came from God. I call him Dad. You understand what I'm saying to you? See, that's not just because I put down a drink. I had to put down a drink. But what happened is, see, you can put down a drink, but there's more to this than just putting down a drink, man. I had to change my whole way of thinking, attitudes, and behaviors. And I talk about that quilt because, see, this quilt is right behind me right here now on my office chair, right? And I'm gonna tell you why it's there real quick. There's a sister on here. My sister who's on here right now. I gotta talk about her. My sister Carol who's on here, right? I do. We were talking one day, right? And this quilt was in the box for 18 years, right? Folded nice and neat. I didn't want nothing to happen to this thing because it's dear to my heart, right? She said, we were on the phone. She said, one day you're not going to be here and they're going to be going through the stuff and they're going to see this quilt is still in the box, right? I'm like, okay. And she says, wouldn't it be nice if they sort the quilt out, she saw it out, and you were using it and loving it instead of it still being in a box, right? So having this conversation, bells went off. It was like, wow, right? It came out that night, right? I even sent her a picture, right? So I brought it to my office. It's hung on my office chair, right? So every day, my daughter, she runs the company she works with, so she sees it every day, right? And it makes her happy, but it makes me even more happy because you know why? When I sit back in my chair, right? It's like God and my daughter wrapping me, holding me tight. See, that's some of the miracles that happen here. And see, I wouldn't be experiencing this miracle right now if I wouldn't share that with another human being. See, there's other people that know things about my life. People who I haven't had a chance to hug on this screen right here, who I love dearly, who are a part of my life, man. I've made relationships on this platform, modem to modem. And it's such a beautiful thing. So I'd end it. So my first Christmas, right? My dad gave me a little box, right? With a bow tie, right? In this box, I'm thinking it gotta be diamonds, pearls, something. You know what I mean? It was a gold key. I was disappointed, sadly disappointed, because it was just a key, right? It took for me to go to my home group that Christmas night for some older members to tell me the miracle that had just happened. They gave me a key back to their home. Another miracle. A place where I wasn't welcome before I got here to Alcoholics Anonymous because of all the stuff that I had done. Again, that just didn't happen because I put down the drink, man. I had to do some work on staying. I had to change. So I think I'm running out of time. I think so. I have to laugh because we always say I'm going to say one more thing, and one more thing always ends up to one more thing. You understand what I'm saying to you? So what happens is, right? So when I sit here now and tell you what I'm going to tell you is, I am blessed beyond measure. My life is amazing. It blows my mind. When I sit here today and tell you how I wanted to pray at 20, wanted to die at 25 years old, I sit here today and tell you, man, how much I want to live. But I shared this the other day. If for some reason my higher power saw fit for me to leave today, I would miss all you lovely people. I really would. But I would be okay. My life has been set straight. I have done the things necessary with my life where I would be okay. And that's a beautiful feeling. That is a beautiful thing. I truly would. So before I got hit Alcoholics Anonymous, my cup was always half empty. I blamed everyone and everybody for my life. I sit here today, my cup is not half empty. My cup is not half full. My cup overflows with gratitude and joy. So I just want to thank all you guys for having me here today. Much love to all of you. Thank you so much. Thank you.